Spawn On Me is the premier podcast spotlighting people of color. Every week, we talk news, what we've been playing, and tell you who's invited to the cookout. Our show is all about talking about gaming through a prism of blackness, because we are the culture. Welcome to Chicago, y'all.
Yo, what up, everybody in Chicago? This is the Spawn On Me podcast with Kahlief Adams. I'm your host, Kahlief Adams. Hope you are doing well. Hope you're having a fantastic week. Hope you're having a lovely, lovely time in all the places that you reside. What up, what up, what up? Massive love to everybody who's been checking out the show. We've been doing some really good content of late, as we always do here on Spawn On Me, and we've been rocking it and making it happen on all the places that we occupy. If you have not checked out the show in its full entirety and checked out all the goodness that we have across the feeds, please go make sure you're checking us out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube. We've been doing some work there. We've been putting up some stuff on our Instagram, on our TikTok. I had a little quick vlog that I put up from my time at GDC, which I'll be talking about in this episode as well. That happened last week. We have a really fantastic interview with Chris Hill from Cat City Games, talking about his game Balls to the Wall. And we have some really fun new footage of Clear Obscure 33 Expedition. I think I said that right. That thing has like such a long name. It is one of those weird things where it's just like, how many pieces are connected to this thing? And what? Expedition 33 is what most people go by. But I think it's Clear Obscure Expedition 33. So we have a lot of fun stuff there. So please make sure you're following us on all those channels. If you want the video versions of our show, check that out on Spotify and YouTube. And you can also check out the audio versions there as well, and Apple Podcasts as well. It's been a good week in terms of running around. Had a couple of things that were in the mix. You might have seen me at the Doom event that'll come up pretty soon. Our Assassin's Creed review is doing well on YouTube. Go check that out. We'll be talking a little bit about the Assassin's Creed Shadows on this episode as well. So there's some goodness everywhere that you turn for Spawn On Me and the stuff that I'm doing out here in these streets. For this episode, we're going to do some news and some what we've been playing in the back half of the show. But first, we're going to talk to our friend Chris, who is one of the co-founders of Cat City Games, and all the stuff that they've been working on with their VR game. Had a really fun time interviewing him and talking to him about all the good stuff that they have been working on and doing. We're going to jump into that and then come back after a small break with the 411 and what we've been playing, and more goodness after that. So make sure you stick around and hang out with us here on Chicago and on Spawn On Me, and here we go. What's good, everybody in Chicago? This is Kahlief here. We are rocking with Chris Hill, coming to us from Cat City Games, talking about their really, really dope XR VR experience, Balls to the Wall. I've been playing it this week on the quest that you lovely folks sent over for me to check out the game. And I've been having a blast with it. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
Chris, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for rocking on the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes. So I want to dig into a little bit of your background. I think one of the things that we try to do on our show is to talk about the experience for developers and how they kind of come to the work. I think it's always important to kind of give people some experiences of and understanding and knowledge about like what is it like to be a dev doing this kind of work, especially for our audience who we are trying to lift up and say this is something you could potentially do too. So talk to me a little bit about your background in the space. I'm excited to hear how you got into all of this madness of this video game world, and wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this actually started off as a exploration into 3D animation. It wasn't even about games. I mean, I've been a gamer going way back, just as like for fun, you know. I mean, after work playing Gears of War with my friends, you know. But I got into 3D animation years ago in Cinema 4D just because I wanted to be able to, I mean, I've been a television editor forever, and I wanted to just be able to like incorporate that into what I do and make my own stuff. And then in 2015, late 2015, the Oculus DK2, I got a hold of one on eBay, which was like before the Rift came out.
Uh-huh.
They had these developer kits, and I found a guy on eBay that sold me one pretty cheap, and I brought all my 3D stuff into the headset, and I was like, this is bananas. I can like walk around in stuff that I've made on the computer, and it's so different on a 2D screen than being able to like stand in your work. And I was like, I want to make something. So right when the Rift came out, I made like this short animated film for the Rift, and like got voice actors to play all the characters. And we went to this convention called VRLA, which doesn't exist anymore. But for a couple of years, it was kind of big in downtown LA. And we had a booth, and people tried it out. And it was a lot of fun, but I never released it publicly because it just wasn't really ready for prime time. It was kind of an experiment. So I just showed it at that convention, and then kind of ended it there. And then the big thing that I was missing, I mean, I kind of got to know Unity while I was doing that, and I knew 3D animation, but the thing I was missing was I didn't know how to code. And, so I bought all these coding books, and it was kind of like, that can just be a tough thing to crack, like C#, So eventually, a couple of years ago, I was like, all right, like this has to happen. Like I got to finally conquer this coding thing. And just started taking courses on Udemy.
Yeah.
Just like basic Unity gaming coding courses on Udemy, and that actually worked. And the courses were cheap; they were like $20 a course. And I spent a year just in my free time, just like experimenting with different types of games and doing these courses. And at the end of that year, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna try to. It's that I wasn't, I'm not like a graduate level coder, but I was like, I know enough to start, So then I started doing balls to the wall.
I mean, I don't mind. I'll give you the keys to the nukes. I'll give if you want to code and figure out a way to get us into a good spot and safeguard democracy, I'm fine with that. I'm okay with this. But I think one of the things that came across in getting some background information on your work and hear you say that is like, I think a lot of people don't understand that like game development is a space in which it is a very open space in terms of being able to translate or move from one space into game development. And people would think that film production, film editing is miles away from the game development space. But I would say it's probably even more the skills that you pull in from learning how to do that kind of work. Some of that translates fairly well to what would wind up being in the game development space. Would you say that that's more on point as an observation, or am I missing the boat on that?
No, I think you're totally on point. I mean, in film and TV production, it's all about storytelling and taste and style. We get hired, those of us who are just like, I mean, I'm not a director or an actor or anything like that. I'm an editor, and I do graphics and visual effects. But I think that's true for writers and cinematographers and all kinds of production designers, all kinds of people who work in film and TV. That it's really, you're getting hired not just because of the hard skills you have, but because of your taste. If you find something funny, but the audience isn't laughing, then you're not gonna, you know what I mean? It just doesn't. The show doesn't work, So, and I think that that's true for video games. Like one of the things that I tried to pay a lot of attention to and get a lot of feedback on with the game is like, is it fun, right? Like you can learn coding and you can make it look pretty, but if it's not fun, then you don't have a game. It's, and so I think in that sense, it's definitely connected, and also just the you're creating worlds. I mean, like one of the first things that I brought into VR was I was doing this reality show back in the day that was like one of those home makeover shows where at the beginning of the episode they always show you like, this is what the kitchen's going to look like when we're done. And then there's a 3D animation of like, we're going to add the open concept, whatever. And I brought those 3D animations of like the kitchen into VR. So it was just like a reality show, home makeover show kitchen in VR. That I just had from an episode I'd worked on. And so it literally translated over,
That's so cool, because I think like one of the things that I think about often when transitioning from I'm not going to say genres, but kind of ideas and roles and jobs, is you take some of those pieces together and you cobble those to get to the next step. So it's like the editing eye and understanding, small things of like, eye line of what you want your characters to see, or how to make a cut within an edit feel important to kind of continue a narrative along and build momentum and bring that stuff together. VR is very much an akin to that in terms of being able to see, in 3D space what a person is looking at and what the things that you need to kind of drive someone to do or engage with are really important. What was one of the or one or two of the kind of most important skills that you brought over from that world into the game development space?
I mean, again, I think it's tone and style, and I'm not, the game's not out yet. Like a limited
Yes.
number of people have been able to try it. So I don't want to be like, I nailed the tone and style in this game. And then it comes out and the reviews are like, this is boring, so hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully it's working. But I think that's the thing that we spend the most time on in TV. Is just like, what's the tone of this? Like, does this work? Is this entertaining? Is it funny? Are people feeling what you're hoping they're feeling when they watch this show? And it's the same thing when you play the game. I tried a bunch of different, as I was making the game, I tried a lot of different approaches to the tone of it. Like at first it was like super sci-fi and then I had an anime thing going on for a while. And then I was like, this is none of this. I'm not feeling any of this. So then I started going towards this like 70s funk vibe for the game. And that started to feel more like, first of all, it felt more like a personal expression. It felt more like me.
Yeah.
But it also just felt more like it just connected everything better than the previous versions of it. But it took several iterations of that to get to something that started to feel like, okay, this is a vibe,
Yeah. And it comes through. I think the, for folks who are at home who have not had a chance to check it out, I've been playing through it. I'm going to actually show some of it in the trailer that you shared. It feels really fun. Like it's not taking itself super seriously, right? It's giving itself a space to live where there's some fun and joy in the way you're working through what is essentially a kind of match 3 game, right? So you're having all of the space, which I love the kind of like universe you've built, which is kind of cool. You're kind of looking around the space and you see this hovering world around you that's kind of enveloping the space. What has it been like for you to kind of think about? What were the kind of initial ideas around Balls to the Wall, and how did you kind of come up with this idea of making this kind of game?
When the Quest 3 first came out, it was at the end of 23. Their big thing was, now it doesn't have to be completely in VR, right? Like now you can see your room and it's holograms, and the Apple Vision Pro had just been announced, and that was a big thing with that headset too. So at first I was just going to make like a straight up VR game. And then once I started looking into the Quest 3, it was like, oh, that could be cool to do something that's just for this. That's what this new thing that they've added. So, and then I was just trying to figure out, I spent that whole year while I was taking coding classes, playing with a bunch of different types of prototypes of games. Like I had, I did a build a prototype that was like a character running around that was more like a Mario game. I tried to race it. I just tried a bunch of stuff. And I landed on the puzzle. Again, actually, this comes from the land of reality TV and film. A lot of, when you boil down a lot of film and TV, it's a very simple idea that just gets polished until to perfection. You know what I mean? I mean, even if you take something like Star Wars, it's just, farm boy has to save the princess from the evil guy. That's the whole movie.
Yeah.
But then they polish that until it turns into something amazing. And I mean, every reality show is essentially that as well. We're gonna fix your kitchen, right? Or we're gonna make cupcakes. We're gonna fix your life. We're gonna fix your kitchen. We're gonna make cupcakes. Whatever it is, you can explain it in 5 words, but then it's all the polish and ideas they throw on top of that to make that simple thing interesting. And so with my first VR project, I tried to do so much. I'm like, I'm going to make Avatar in VR. You know what I mean? I went so far that there was no way to really polish it and make it good. So this time I was like, keep it simple. Let's make a puzzle and let's see if we can just make that really entertaining and fun.
I think one of the things I love to hear you talk about the iteration process and where you get from a prototype to something that feels more ready to kind of share with the world. And you talked about that kind of polishing a very simple idea as being really important. When you think about the differentiators between a game like this and there are, many games in these stores that are in there, what's the thing that pulls your game together that feels really, really different in some of the ways that, still pulling on that very, very simple premise that gives it something extra for folks to be able to like, oh, this is really interesting and different in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it actually is the simplicity. I mean, I think that there's this temptation with a VR game to try to make something that you know throws a lot at you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and gets really complicated. And so going back to doing something that's in VR and it's mixed reality, but it's as simple as those old school arcade games. You know what I mean? Tetris or even, Candy Crush or Duck Hunt or any of those kinds of games where you really just needed like a one button controller, and a thumbstick, and you didn't have to, you didn't have to learn 50 steps to play the game.
Yeah.
I think that to me that's a little bit different in this game.
I mean, it's something I really appreciate. I think, as a person who plays a ton of games all the time with multiple systems and everything is like trying to like blast you with VFX and everything else, it was really nice to be able to jump into this and say like, okay, I have a total understanding of what this game is asking of me. And in between that time, as a person who is like a score muncher, a person who loves to be able to get the high score in a game and be like, I'm the top of the list. That was my driver was like, oh, I'm going to try to get as high of a score as I possibly can and see how far I can go before I find up losing. And that feeling is really, really cool. I love the fact that that's like the baseline premise of a game like this, and it's really driving on that and really kind of coming together with that. I also love the fact that, I think 3D spaces are also really interesting because when you're in VR, you have this idea of what your body's supposed to do at all times and what your eyes are supposed to look at all times. But the fact that you can kind of just like place the board wherever you want and use that sometimes even as a kind of like way to up your own difficulty is like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, so I like when I did, I put it in, cause I have a fairly small living room, but I put it in a corner that was kind of catty corner to see like, can I still get these on an angle and do stuff like that? So I'm like trying to play the game even more on a hard mode to for myself to give myself even more.
How'd you do when you put it in at the angle? How did it go?
It was okay. I think it worked. I mean, it's very aim dependent, right? So it's like getting a chance to be able to do that stuff. So my aim was a little bit off, and there are definitely some things that I would love to see in the game once it goes live and things like that. But I think for the experience that I had initially with putting it directly in front of me and doing it on that kind of flat wall and then having that angled experience, it was actually really interesting to see how your brain thinks about the angle of your body doing things. Like it changes a lot of those aspects of it, which I think is fascinating when you come into a VR space. One
of the things that Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, keep going. Keep going.
The last June, I finally started to get the multiplayer 2-player mode working, and the first person that I ever tried it with was my nephew, who's a teenager and like can figure out any video game in 5 seconds. And the first thing he did was walk right up to the puzzle and just start shooting all the marbles. And he's like, I broke your game, Uncle Chris. Like, I can just. So that's why now there's like a 6-foot. If you get closer than 6 feet to the puzzle, the gun doesn't work. That's because my nephew just broke that at day one and was just like.
I mean, that's good though. Those are those moments where you're like, oh, okay. I mean, talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that's the thing that, again, you've been in the space for a couple of years now on the development side, right?
Yeah. I mean, the game itself took 14 months.
Yeah.
to make. And then there was the year before that of just like prototyping different types of games and taking those coding courses.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the biggest learnings that you've had during that process? Because it's always every developer I've ever talked to. We've been doing this show for now 11 years. Every developer I've talked to, the first thing they talk about is like, I didn't foresee this way of having my game broken. What was, besides that moment, what were some of the other ones that kind of came up for you?
100%. Yeah, nobody, when you're making a game, you're thinking about how you want the game to be played.
Yeah.
And you sort of expect that like, well, this is how you play this game. But what I learned was that no one's going to do that. Everyone's going to play the game the way they want to play it. And so, some people just want to like shoot at the puzzle. Like they don't want to sit there and strategize like, yo, I'm going to swap this and make the longer chains. They just want to like shoot. And the early versions of the game, that completely broke the game to just like crazy shoot at it. So there was a lot of, I spent a few months actually working to like protect the game from that, like so that you can just shoot at it like crazy and it doesn't break. I mean, there was a lot of stuff like that that was just everybody plays it differently and it still has to work regardless of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the hardest parts that I've heard as well from folks who have jumped into development pool. Has been, when you're having those moments of, players doing things you don't expect, how do you mitigate that? But then also, how do you incorporate some of those findings into the game as well to be like, oh, that's not necessarily bad feedback that we're getting from that part of the playtest group. Like that's something that we can capitalize or use on or use to kind of make the game even better. Are you having conversations with other devs in the space? Because I feel like the XR VR space is getting a resurgence as well. Like it feels like there's a lot of folks who are jumping back into the pool and saying, "Oh, this is still a viable space to make really, really fun and interesting experiences." Are you talking to other folks in the XR VR dev space to get tips and tricks about how to navigate the space in a lot of those ways?
Yeah, and this is for anyone who is thinking about getting into developing games or specifically getting into developing for the Quest, Meta has this program called the Start Program, which is amazing. And the only prerequisite is you kind of have to have a little bit of the game done to show them to get in. But if I had one level done when I showed it to them, and they were like, "Yeah, you're in." And then once you get in, you're on this Discord with other developers who are also new, and you can answer questions, ask questions. There's meta engineers in the chat that you can, that'll jump in if nobody has the answer, and you can, people show off their work like, "Yo, here's what I'm working on this, like whatever." I mean, there's a bunch of different kind of subreddits inside that Discord that you can hop into to do exactly what you're saying. So yeah, I mean, that was a huge help for me to be able to talk to other developers, ask questions, answer questions. And I even was able to get on a Zoom once with a couple of meta engineers when there was some UI stuff I just couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
And I mean, for months. And I got on Zoom with these guys and shared my screen. And in 3 minutes, they were like, "Click this, this, and that," and I almost cried. I was like, dude, it's been 6 months. And they were like, "Yo, this game looks interesting. Like we try out games on Fridays. Maybe we'll try our game." I'm like, "Oh, I'll send you guys some free codes." They're like, "We don't need the code. We don't need the code.
We got the code already."
Yeah, we don't need your game code.
Thank you for putting it on our platform. We already got it. Thank you so much. That is such a meta move too, in terms of just like, "Yeah, son, we got that already. You don't have to mess up with things. We got that already."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited for you to see this kind of come out and see how the reception is. I'm also really curious to hear. I think most folks also, once they have a project that is kind of being ready to be released and getting ready to kind of go out in the world, they also still have things in their back pocket that they're like, "Ooh, we're all looking forward to the next project because we're as creators, right? We're all looking at things and being like, I know I got some really good learnings from this, and this would be really cool." Are you thinking about doing anything that's even more akin in the VR space to some of the more narrative ideas that you had when kind of moving from the film and production space there too? Are you thinking about talking about narrative and talking about vibe and talking about story? Are you thinking about doing more projects in that space as well?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's not going to be game two.
Sure.
I think that's still a little ways off, but yeah, I would love to circle back to that original concept of like, let's make an animated film in VR, and crack that. One of the
Mhm.
hard things about one of the things I loved about it, but was also really hard about it, was that I made it animated. And I made it in a game engine, that first project, so that you could walk around the each scene as the scene happened, right? Like you're
Mhm.
not stuck in one perspective. You can experience the whole movie however you want. And but that also makes it super hard because like, what if you just walk out of the room? What's outside that room? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's, you know, I haven't cracked that. That was one of the reasons I didn't release it. But I would love to hop back into that one day and try again.
I mean, I've been waiting for someone to do the VR version of basically Sleep No More, and have that be that experience where you're walking through a long scene or a long play, and you're coming in at whatever point in that discussion that you wind up going, because that was a transformative experience for me. And I was like, this would be perfect for VR. Why hasn't someone done that? I'm like, I'm sure 7,000 people have already decided they want to do something like that in that way. Um, but it's
You
cool.
ever play Heavy Rain?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yep,
You know
yep,
what I mean? Like
yeah,
Heavy Rain in VR.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, as a fellow New Yorker, I know we're both on the West Coast now, but as New Yorkers at heart, I want some more New York stories. I want some, like, what does it feel like to grow up in the neighborhood that I grew up in? I'm from the Bronx originally. So it's, having those moments of stories and things like that. Do you feel like is there a story that you feel like is not being told in that VR space narratively that you would really love to see?
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, don't
I'm
give it
gonna
away
keep that. I'm gonna
if
keep
it's the
yeah, I'm
if
gonna
it's the personal
yeah,
secret. Yeah,
yeah.
hold that, because I don't want you to give that away. I don't want the internet to steal that from you. But yeah, I love that. I think again, going back to Balls to the Wall, I think you're nailing the fun vibe. I think you're nailing the minutia of what this game is supposed to be. I think it really feels extremely good to be able to shoot and feel like you're actually, it's weird because, like, on your phone for games like that, you always feel like you're having this kind of top down experience. This, with it kind of enveloping the world and being around you, it adds another layer to the visceral experience of being able to kind of do that work in that way. So yeah, I think you're doing a
Oh,
great
cool,
job
man.
in
Thank
terms
you.
of how that feels and how that goes. We're about to jump up out of here. But let folks know where they'll be able to go check out the game and more info on the studio. So we can put all that information in our show notes when we put the episode out. But I'd love to give you the stage to say, give you some time to promote your stuff, promote your work.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I mean, you can check out the game on meta.com. Just search Balls to the Wall to find the store page. And then, we're posting how-tos and all kinds of other videos on our YouTube channel at Cat City Games, to, just kind of walk people through like different tips and tricks.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Chris, I'd love to have you back on the show next when the game drops, when the next project comes out. You have a seat here at Spawn on Me to come through and come rock and hang out.
We
And
got to
really,
do one just about New York.
I mean, I was gonna jump into that, but I was like, you know what? Like, that's gonna be a whole other
We'll do a whole
conversation.
thing just on that.
That'll be a whole other, I mean, because you have some really fantastic, history in your family of, folks who are well known in the spaces in the film and movie industry. With your dad, if I'm not mistaken, was Cyrus in the
Yeah,
Warriors.
yeah. He was a New York theater actor. My mom was a graphic designer. Both my parents are also from the Bronx.
Yeah,
My dad grew up in the Throgs Neck projects. My mom at Patterson.
yeah.
And then they got into the arts. And then in '78, my dad did the Warriors and played Cyrus, and they did the "Can you dig it?"
Mm-hmm.
speech. And then he went on to do One Life to Live. He did a soap for in the '80s after that.
ABC
Yeah, I mean
classic.
we're ABC classic. Yeah, no, we're New Yorkers, like OG. You know.
Yeah. That's a whole other conversation. And Shaq owes your family money. As I'm gonna say that out of I may have been running that line into the ground for years and years and years. That man owes y'all money. But that's a whole other conversation. Whole other conversation. Chris, thank you so
We'll
much.
revisit.
Yes, absolutely. We need to definitely talk about the New Yorkness very, very soon. Chris, thank you so much for being here and appreciate the time. Everybody at home, please go check out the game. It's really, really dope. It's a lot of fun. I had a blast playing it. I'm still playing it and going through it and trying to get my score up there. So when you try to roll at me, you're not going to be able to handle this business. It's not going to work. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Everybody at home, we're going to take a quick break and have more Spawn on Me here with you right after this. What a lovely interview with our friend Chris over at Cat City. Again, super excited about everything that they're doing over there with Balls to the Wall. The game is super fun. I know it just came out this week, so check that out and make sure you're playing the game if you have a VR device to dig into and all of that goodness there. We're going to take a quick break and come back with the 411 and what we've been playing right after this.
Hey there, my name is Naomi, and you might know me from internet things like hosting for IGN. I'd like to introduce you to my new show, This Week in Gaming. It's 20 minutes, short and sweet, and every week I go through all the important gaming news that you need to know, and then we have folks on like Kahlief Adams, who shows up quite often, talk about all the important news. And you get to listen to it wherever you get your podcast, so it's easy to find. Just look for This Week in Gaming and make sure to give it a follow. And every week, Monday at 9 p.m. Pacific time, you get a brand new episode. I hope you'll join me.
Hey everybody, Kahlief here from the Spawn on Me podcast. Hey, we have been in the market for new PCs for a long time, and for our 10th year anniversary, the wonderful folks from NZXT have partnered with us in a collab to be our hardware sponsors. So, if you are looking for a new PC to stream or to game in the best way possible, go check out nzxt.co/spawnonmebld, and you'll be able to find a perfect PC for you, whether that be the Player 1 machine, Player 2 machine, or Player 3 machine. The ones that we're rocking for our new studio build. They have everything you possibly could need for the best PC experience on the planet. Remember to go check out nzxt.co/spawnonmebld, and they will get you set up right. Much love and peace. First up on the 411, it looks like our wonderful folks in the gaming community, the gaming grifters, have been thwarted again by the game Assassin's Creed Shadows doing pretty well after all of the kerfuffles, all the fussing, all the racism, all the nonsense that they have been talking about this game not having anyone play it, and it's going to immediately bomb as soon as it launches. And it seems like, you know, with all the conversations that they have been having, that they are now in the spot of trying to figure out how to cope with all the goodness that's happening. The official Assassin's Creed X page or X account shared that they have hit 2 million players in the game as of launch in terms of the first, I think, 24 hours of the game being out there. You know, so then, you know, the immediate conversation has been from those folks in that space, all the anti-woke crowd, and, you know, we was Kangs. We don't want a black samurai in our game, and everything else is terrible in the world, have been moving the goalposts because their favorite place, SteamDB, where they go to figure out what a game is doing in terms of its sales and what it's doing in terms of its game health, which, air quotes, is the most reasonable way to look at that, which it totally isn't. It's really not the best way to kind of determine how many, how well a game is doing. It is an indicator, but it is not the best indicator. So these folks love to run to SteamDB to go check out what a game is doing on Steam in terms of its all-time players and the player peaks. And the game right now, as of today, which is Sunday, is doing the best it's ever done. In fact, it's doing better than every other Assassin's Creed game has ever done on PC. At least 64,000 plus players playing it at least sometime on their Steam accounts. We know that this game is one that plays a lot, or at least a lot of folks play it on console. But it's really nice to be able to see the game doing well on PC, where I will tell you right now, like, go make sure you check out our review and check out the footage that we have there, because I believe all of that footage is from the PC build that we've been playing with. That game is gorgeous. That game is beautiful. That game is stunning. It is one of the prettiest games of 2025. But it goes back to the conversation of, I think, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that a lot of folks who are haters, they continuously drive up, this sentiment that everything is bad and everything is terrible and everything that you go and play and everything that you want to go check out from a media perspective is bad. And we wind up seeing often that that's not the case. We wind up seeing that a lot of times these discussions around video games and around new IP is that, we don't know what's going to happen until players actually have it in hands and they're excited for it. I think a lot of folks were already excited for this game. And I think a lot of people were hyped going into Assassin's Creed Shadows being on the market. And I feel like, again, just another example of how all of these folks who spend so much time making videos and jumping on the internet and making all these cockamamie weird conclusions about how games are made and what's the process and how woke a thing is and all of this stuff. Like, I've never seen so many people be wrong about multiple things in such a short amount of time, that it's kind of great. It's kind of fantastic to see them have to eat a little bit of crow. Now, again, we don't know what this means in terms of sales, but I think it is. You see a game like this that has gone through a ton of controversy with, supposedly the Japanese government being mad about shrines, which they patched out to kind of keep themselves out of potential trouble. But you see all of these conversations happen and you're like, man, like what's the move here? But seeing the official channels share, number counts or at least player counts so far, it tells me that they are in a potentially strong position when it comes to sales. Like, I don't think that a lot of companies at this point, because you can fact check and you can kind of go through the process of looking to see where things land, they're not going to share information like this unless there's some credence behind it and some, some actual information there that makes sense. So I'm super excited to see this be the thing for them. I'm happy that they are, including their player base and getting that information out there to kind of squash some of this information. It was great to see the official channels go after and give some vinegar to the biggest hater of them all, Grums, and a lot of folks, Mark Kern, who's been kind of leading the charge with a lot of the nonsense that's been going up. And those folks right now are upset. Like, those folks are jumping into parties and making videos and trying to dispute all the stuff that's been coming out, and anything that's small and a bug. Oh my God, this is the worst game on the planet. Oh my God, this game has credits that are 2 hours long. Oh my God. All of these things to try to discredit the fact that the game is doing well, when all they have to do is just try it and check it out and play it. And if they don't like it, don't like it. Like, don't recommend it to your people. But it is such an interesting and funny thing to see all of these people get so upset about, again, a thing that we should all be checking out and enjoying and having fun with. I literally just finished the game last night. I put in about 60 hours or so and got to the finish line on that game and rolled credits on it. I did not watch the full 2 hours of the credits, but that game is great. That game is fantastic. I'm really excited actually to see, after seeing some parts of the game, I won't spoil it, how they treat some of the, the main characters post game. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with their characters, because there are some really good layers there for DLC to really go in and talk about and tell some fun stories that are not only historic but also kind of future facing in the way that Assassin's Creed does when it comes to conversations around the Animus and conversations around the Templars and all of those things. So I'm very excited and massive love to Ubi for, for having the strength to continue to push this game out and get it out into the world and it be really good. Again, one of the most beautiful games you've ever seen. It is now my favorite samurai game. It has taken over for Ghost of Tsushima in that way. Next story up in the 411 is that the industry is looking to really go hard on unionization. We just got some word from the UVW-CWA, United Video Game Workers Coalition, that they are now looking to embark on something, groundbreaking, in which they are looking to make a industry-wide union that anyone can join. They put out a statement on their X account the other day that said, "Today, in historic development for video game organizing, workers across the U.S. and Canada are launching United Video Games Workers CWA Local 9433, a direct join industry-wide video game union with Communication Workers of America, CWA, in partnership with the American Federation of Musicians, AFM, that will launch formally and announcing at the 2025 Game Developers Conference, GDC, the world's largest industry event for video game professionals, where they will be talking about the union that they are looking to form." It is pretty interesting to see this be where they're going, and I think this is fantastic, not only for the future of the video game space, for what it can be. We've seen record layoffs, we've seen a bunch of constriction of the space by force of labor, by games getting closed and studios getting closed. And one of the biggest conversations and discussions that are being had in the industry space is, how do you find good ways to safeguard yourself? I think, as a person who also was let go and laid off last year or the year before, it is devastating to find that the work that you've been looking to do is no longer there, or the studio that you've been working at has gotten closed or is getting closed, with a ton of games that are coming out, but also not a lot of protections for workers, for folks who are in that space. I'm very happy to see this be a thing. It is going to change a lot of conversations around the industry, around studios, how this works for, things like crediting and protections and finding good ways to make sure that workers are safe, is going to be paramount and is going to be really important to see where this goes and how many people are going to adopt it, and what's going to happen from a pushback perspective. I don't see this being a thing where, this happens without some chaff from, higher ups and studio heads and the folks who are in the boardrooms, who are the stockholders. I definitely foresee there being some pushback here that we're going to wind up seeing. But I love the fact that they are organizing. I love the fact that they are thinking about making this move. And I love the fact that this is now going to be a place where, if you are a worker, especially a young worker in the space who is looking to grow, the movement is now kind of starting in a full-throated way that hopefully will give some space for veterans and newbies to find, a place in this industry where they can thrive and they can continue to grow into their craft and become seasoned veterans and become people who have longevity. Because I think most people in the space really want just that. They want to find a way to connect. They want to find a way to grow. They want to find a way for stability, especially with the current U.S. administration that is looking to gut anything that has potential oversight or over spaces that are connected and potentially leading into government spaces, like, the gaming industry and United States government are very separate, but, the overarching discussion around DEI and that moving away, that is definitely waterfalling down into some studios in the ways that they're thinking about hiring, and a lot of companies are moving away from the way that they were talking in 2020 about diversity initiatives and all of those conversations within. So we're hoping that this union and other ones like it, if this gains some traction, paves the way for more spaces and places for these things to thrive in a much bigger way. So kudos to them. I sent out an inquiry through their contact page to see if we can get somebody from the union on the show to talk about their initiatives and things they're looking to build into, new contracts that we wind up seeing industry wide and other initiatives and discussions that they want to have. But I'm very excited for the prospect of where this lands and what this potentially can mean for the future of games and the future of the industry in a much bigger way. So with that, that's all the 411 news for this week I want to dig into. Of course, there's conversations and discussions around the new Xbox handheld. I don't know if I want to really poke at that yet. I mean, it's kind of interesting. The big scuttlebutt was, they had put up somebody on the Xbox team put up an advertisement or a piece of marketing material, and it had somewhere in there some visual of Steam being related to it or Steam being connected to it, and it immediately got pulled down and it got put back up. And it fueled the rumors again that like whatever this new Xbox and potential handheld are going to wind up being, there'll be some Steam integration or you'll be able to play your Steam games on it. We're still like a year and some change away from that thing. Like whatever it's going to be is going to be cool. I think whatever it's going to be is going to have a ton more functionality as a PC than it will have as a just kind of regular Xbox console. I'm going to hold off on jumping into that boat and that discussion just yet because, to be fair, it's not a lot of stuff here to discuss, at least for me. Like I see online everyone digging into this and, what does this mean? And how does this work? And that kind of stuff. And I'll be honest, I don't really care yet. Like until I see a thing that has Jason Ronald or Phil Spencer or Sarah Bond in front of it and saying, here is the next generation of Xbox and here's what this means for you, I kind of don't care. Like the discussion is going to be there when it's going to be there. And we, God willing, if I'm still alive by the time that thing comes out, like we'll have a bigger discussion about what that means. But for now, we're going to jump into some stuff that I was playing this past week over at GDC in our segment, What We've Been Playing. So there's been a couple of really interesting games that I got a chance to play. The Xbox had a ID at Xbox kind of showcase. We went in, and we've gone to this a couple of years at this point, and we go hang out and see all our friends and fam over on the Xbox side of the fence, and talk to them about some of the games that they want to showcase and show off, and give a kind of good understanding of some of the breadth and depth of games that are coming to Xbox platforms and things in their ecosystem. And, I when you get those appointments, the first thing you do is kind of look through the list and you say, all right, what games am I looking for right now that are interesting? You get if you haven't already seen them and talked about them on content that you've seen before, or you're looking for new things. Sometimes there's a lot of, new and interesting games. And some of the things are, potentially out of my purview or games that I necessarily wouldn't check out. But they set us up in this really dope bar, and they have a whole bunch of stations. You can go around, go capture some footage, and go sit down with some of the devs. And there were a couple of games that were there that really piqued my interest that I was super excited for. And one of them was this game here called Hotel Barcelona. So this game is a side-scroller kind of horror-esque game that is kind of almost like hack and slash, mixed a little bit with a roguelike. And also there's some Metrovania vibes with it in the way the kind of map systems work. The really interesting thing is that this comes from a studio called Owl Games that is connected to Suda51 and Swery, two of my favorite developers of all time, who make really funky, really interesting games and really cool stuff. And Hotel Barcelona is like super dope. It is a really cool experience that feels new. It feels really, innovative in what it's trying to pull off with, okay, we're going to try to balance, you getting certain weapons and getting familiar with those while also, playing in this horror theme that feels like you're kind of playing through and getting to the end of a horror movie. Like every chapter is basically like it has a poster that feels like one that you would see for the ramp up for a horror movie. But it's like all these small little fun details. So like you're trying to hack and slash your way. You have multiple versions of weapons. I think in the time that I played, I switched between a axe, kind of like these grinders that are basically like saws on your hands. And you're balancing between, variations on weapons, variations on, what weapons you kind of find in the world, variations on enemy types, while you're trying to get to the end of these levels and work your way through the map to get to the boss. So like every time you get to a boss, you have your kind of usual boss fight. And in between those bosses or between those levels, you're kind of picking up power-ups, picking up these variations on tasks. So like, if you kill three enemies at once, you'll get a boon basically for your character. Usually have a melee weapon and a gun. And, it's still pretty early on. I think it had some things to work through in terms of controls. But I think from an interest perspective, games like this are really, really fun because they give you the space to think about not only things that I always find fun, which are, how do I tackle a run? How do I figure my way through this puzzle? How do I figure my way through, getting from the beginning to the end in the best and kind of easiest way possible, while also, making sure that I'm paying attention to all of my resources and all of my power-ups and all of my level ups and all those kinds of things. I had a blast with it. It was super fun. It was one of my favorite games of the show. It's one of those games that I'm dying to play when it winds up dropping because it feels like they are nailing, that moment to moment. How do you navigate space and, having your twitch reflexes be on point so that you're not dying when you see those, when you're not dying when you get to a level. I love stuff like that in a big way. So I'm very excited about what that game is going to wind up being. Another game that I'm very excited to check out that I sadly didn't get a chance to play was Wheel World. Wheel World, again, the folks from Annapurna and those amazing teams are dope because they get to show off games like this. It's a racing game. You're on a bike. You can level up your bike and traverse these kind of painterly spaces. It's kind of cel shaded, but it feels like, oh man, I forgot the name of that game that they played. Almost a little bit of Rollerdrome in here in terms of the way it feels and looks. Very excited for this game, especially because the tinkering and art style is something that really speaks to me. Again, you can ride as a hot dog and things like that. So it's like open roam plus exploration plus racing all on a bike. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with this game and how it's received by a lot of people. Another game, To a T, which comes to us from Keita Takahashi, master of Katamari Damacy, and Annapurna again coming through with another banger of a game. Again, like Annapurna continues to just put together such a dope slate of games in their catalog that it's always fun to go check their games out. So this game is basically like a story. It's a story game where you're this young kid, and every time you put on a t-shirt, it kind of changes what that kid can do and what happens to him. It's interesting because he just walks around in T-pose all the time, which is fun, which is funny, which I love. It's really cute, really fun. Again, I was watching kind of over people's shoulders when I got a chance to check it out and look at it. It looks great. I love stuff like this. Games like these are just really, really fun just cute and dope. I like stuff like this to be in the mix. I think, you know, the older I get, I'm looking for some cozy games in with all the kind of big named hardcore stuff that I play all the time. And games like these are super cute. And Keita Takahashi is you know, a master of his craft. I think we're seeing now some developers who we've known their games from years and years and years that have become classics are getting to make things that they really want to make. And that part of it is just a pleasure. It's always nice to be able to see those things come to fruition and see, you know, games like these in the world. The other one that I'm actually really excited for, and again, like all these stations were pretty packed, was Mandragora. I think I'm saying that right. Mandragora, Whispers of the Witch Tree, was another side-scrolling, almost, I'm not going to say Souls-like game, but a little bit of puzzling. You know, it's a Souls-like action RPG. It's doing exactly what you have an expectation for with a game like this. But what I do love is the fact that this is taking all of those aspects that you know from Souls-likes and expanding on them from a side-scrolling perspective and giving you what looks to be some fun lore and really interesting gameplay and combat. So hyped for that. That's going to be dropping fairly soon. There's a lot of games dropping in April, which is going to be a jam-packed month for a lot of things. And the last game that I got a chance to see up close and get some new footage that we're going to be putting up on our YouTube channel, we're going to be running through all of those things, is I got a chance to see and finally get a chance to see Expedition 33. The homie, Rihanna Manuel Pena, was on the sticks, and I captured some of her gameplay while she was in the game. And again, every time I see this thing, it blows me away. The art style, the visuals, the smoothness of gameplay, the variations on what you can do in this game when you're playing it, from the traditional turn-based combat to the action-based combat. There are some things in this game that I was not ready for. There were some moments in this thing that really blew me away. Just like I'm sitting there watching, and it's so funny because, I'm playing so often that I'm not watching people play unless I'm watching them on Twitch. And this thing, they show, like, we turned a corner because they basically had like a 3-hour demo, and you could play the full 3 hours if you wanted to, and kind of sit there and roll through it, kind of learn more about the systems and learn more about the combat and all those kinds of things. And there's a boss at the end of it. And this boss was terrifying. Like, it looked ridiculous. It looked so cool to be able to see what this thing was going to wind up being. I was blown away by how interesting and intricate the details of the combat were. Like, it's a mix of, that turn-based, you pick a spell and kind of do something, and then it'll switch to a little bit of, almost a timing-based game where you have to, time when you're going to hit the button so that you can do the most damage and get the most out of your attack. Like, those things were so cool to be able to see, pulling through, and these big kind of expansive skill trees that give you so many things to be able to do. I am so excited for what that's going to wind up being in the world. Here's a quick look at what I think was the boss, or one of the bosses in the space. Man, this game is going to be so good. Like, I'm so hyped for what this is going to wind up being. This is a day one thing for me. I am ridiculously just like, I want it now. Like, we had, like, anytime somebody was on the sticks playing this thing, it gathered a crowd. And also, this looks just like Robert Patterson. I don't know how they got away with this. This main dude looks so much like Robert Patterson in this game. Is unreasonable, but super cool in the way that got played. I'm just dying to find out more about the lore. Hyped to see what's going to happen for these characters. Really, really excited to kind of, dig through what the world is going to wind up being. Man, this game is going to be good. Like, I think, for all the discussions that have been in the space for the past couple of months and, Xbox doesn't have anything to show and Xbox doesn't have any games to play and all this kind of stuff. Like, they've already shown that there are some really fire titles that are coming into their library, and also other people's libraries. But like, I remember almost a year ago, all these conversations, all these discussions about how, they got nothing. There's nothing happening. There's nothing coming. Like they've already shown that there are some bangers in the mix for what's coming and for all the discussions that are happening underneath the Xbox umbrella. And if you're in that ecosystem, like you have goodness to play, Expedition 33, 33 Immortals, which I'm going to play some more of this weekend. That game is fire. Going back into early preview for that. There's a ton of stuff on the plate for them, for us to be able to play across the board. Like, again, the best time to be a gamer right now. There's a lot of goodness that's happening out in the world. We can't front that there are not good things out here because people are on the outside saying that everything is bad. This is the perfect example of like why you have to go and experience things for yourself, because so many of these other folks just don't want to have joy in the space. So it's nuts. So GDC was a banger in a lot of different ways. Like, I think GDC was, for me, just a really fun time. It was, again, one where we get a chance to hang out with so many dev friends and a lot of people in the industry who are brilliant and super smart and really working towards, the goodness of the industry. And, getting a chance to check out some games. And there's even more stuff that I got a chance to check out as well that we'll be talking about a little bit earlier. Maybe something that's on this hoodie. Maybe something that's on this hoodie that's on here that, maybe got a chance to get an interview with some folks about that game. More stuff that's coming up. We have to do our RTX 5080 content with Half-Life 2 RTX. So that'll be coming up on the YouTube feeds. So I can swap that card out of that machine over there and swap in the 5080. And there's just some sprinklings of other things that are in the mix. Atomfall just dropped. I've been playing through that of late after just finishing Assassin's Creed. So it's a lot. Like, I'm feeling it right now. There's a lot of stuff to play, a lot of stuff to review, a lot of things to talk about. But that's it for our episode. That's it for 542. Massive shout out to all the folks that were with us. Chris Hill from Cat City Games. Again, go check out Balls to the Wall. That was super fun. There's some also other VR things I got a chance to check out at GDC that we'll be talking about as soon as embargo opens up for those. And everybody who I got a chance to go see at GDC, I always come back from that event feeling very, very good about what the space can be if we just give everyone a job to be able to do what they want and let them do the work. And let them continue to find out good ways to be a good servant and be a part of such a lovely industry that is giving joy to millions of people across the world. So we're up out of here. Much love to you all. Make sure you're, again, checking out all of our content on all those places I talked about earlier, YouTube and Spotify for video and audio versions of the show, Apple Podcasts for audio versions only, and our TikTok and our Instagram, youtube.com/SpawnOnMe, Spotify. You can go check out the links there. Twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe was where we're going to be playing some games sometime this week, and more goodies over there. So again, make sure you're following the show, subscribing to the show, following the show, giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we got some good stuff coming up in April. It's almost April. Some new things happening, some things that you're definitely going to want to make sure you keep your eyes and ears peeled for in terms of content that I'll be doing with some friends, and some new opportunities that will be coming up very, very shortly. So until then, much love to you all. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And until then, much love, peace, hair grease, wash your hands, wash your butt, and take care of yourselves out in the world. And until then, we say